Hey there, community, and welcome to the Providence podcast. I'm Sister Leslie, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is offered to you by the Sisters of Divine Providence of Kentucky through our outreach ministry called God Space. You can stay connected with God Space at godspacecommunity.com, and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter. And if you could help a sister out by subscribing to this podcast and sharing it widely. Speaking of sharing, this week in the podcast, I'll be joined by two of my sisters. I hope our sharing is helpful. I think you'll appreciate their wisdom and insights. Also, as we were sharing, I referred to a book called The Whole Language, The Power of Extravagant Tenderness by Father Greg Boyle. And I realized after I held up the book, and I forgot that some of you are listening and can't see it. Just wanted to make sure I named it for all of you listeners. A rookie mistake, I know. So we'll get started with our sharing together on this first Sunday of Lent. Thanks for being with us. Well, welcome everybody to the Providence podcast. As always, we are so glad you're here. As you can see, we have some special guests with us today on the podcast for this first Sunday of Lent. So I feel like you've met all of us before, but in case you haven't, we'll start with some introductions and then we'll move forward into our reflection. So Sister Judy, why don't you start by introducing yourself?
Okay, I'm Sister Judith Riese, and my ministry is giving aid to senior citizens when they need it.
Great, thank you. Sister Alice, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sister Alice Gerdeman. I have a ministry that most days changes. This morning I worked with some refugees, and other days I do justice and peace work. So I guess I'm on call for various and sundry things.
Great. And, I'm Sister Leslie. We all go way back. So I'm happy to have us all together to do our reflection. Sister Judy is going to begin by reading the scripture passage that we'll reflect on. And then we'll do kind of a modified Lectio Divina like we've done before. We'll begin by sharing a word or phrase that we notice. And then we'll move into more sharing how it speaks to us, how it resonates with us. And then we'll share about call or invitation that we hear from God. And all of you who are listening, we hope that you also, as you listen to us share, are thinking about how this resonates with you and all the ways that the Spirit is moving in you and how God is speaking to you through this reading. So thanks for being part of our circle of sharing. And now we'll get started with our gospel, which I think is from Matthew.
Matthew.
Okay.
A reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was hungry. The tempter approached and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command that these stones become loaves of bread." He said in reply, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and made him stand on the parapet of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "Again, it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Then the devil took him up to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their magnificence. And he said to him, All these I shall give to you if you will prostrate yourself and worship me." At this, Jesus said to him, "Get away, Satan. It is written, 'The Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve.'" Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Lord Jesus Christ.
So if there's a word or a phrase that you noticed, you're welcome to share it.
Hungry.
I reflected on this twice and I came up with two different words. One was tempted, and the other was he was hungry.
Led by the Spirit. So now we'll open up to a little bit of sharing about maybe why this is resonating for us, how it reminds us of what's happening in our lives. In our community, we call this a faith sharing, in which we just talk about how God is moving and working and present to us. Really, how God's providence is in our lives. So we'll just kind of open up to our sharing about this reading.
Well, I'll speak to the words hungry and tempted. As I was praying with this, I thought to be hungry can be hungry for many things. But in this case, it was a physical hunger because of 40 days of fasting. And it's also a spiritual hunger, striving for something more, something beyond themselves. And it seems to me when a person is hungry, you are ripe for temptation because there is a great need inside. And the desire to give in to that temptation is very strong.
Mm.
So that's the reason why I chose those words for right now.
Mm.
The bottom question is, what are you hungry for?
Mm.
I think what sort of struck me was the fact that Jesus, who we know to be the Son of God, was being tempted and debated practically the devil, which is not something I ever want to do, but, that was sort of what was happening. But what the temptation that were presented to Jesus, all powerful of God, was that of power.
Mm.
It was like you could change these stones into food if you wanted to, you know. You you could you could do whatever you want. You could tempt God if you want, dare God if you want. Jesus didn't do either one of those in the face of his temptation. But then it was on the height of the mountain. And, what came to my mind, maybe it's because it's February and, I thought a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, I went to the mountain in one of his last talks. And the mountain, was a place of power and I guess holiness almost. Moses went up to the tower. And so that was a different kind of power.
Mm.
And, with all of the power struggles going on right now, I thought, wouldn't it be great if we could figure out as individuals or as a country, just go to the mountain and let the power of God take over instead of having to try to be powerful people.
Mm. Mm. for me, I have often thought, like, I guess I pictured Jesus in these 40 days and nights in the struggle of being tempted and hungry and all that stuff. And of course, we get this reading right at the beginning of Lent here. So I guess that's kind of how I've thought about it. But recently, I was looking again at this book by Father Greg Boyle, and he kind of reframes right at the beginning of his book the temptation in the desert as like actually a moment of tenderness between Jesus and God. That Jesus goes out to the desert led by the Spirit, and then God says, "Oh, you're here," and Jesus's only response is, "You're here." And it's just such a different way of thinking about this reading that it really has stayed with me. So I guess I noticed those words led by the Spirit because, I mean, the Spirit doesn't lead us into things that are terrible for us, but sometimes leads us into things that are maybe hard or challenging or maybe kind of outside the box or outside of our comfort, outside of my comfort, I should say. But if I think about Jesus and God in a moment of tenderness here, it kind of helps me to think about how maybe that's how Jesus was able to move through these temptations. And maybe it wasn't actually a hardship, but that God was very intimately with him. And I guess I think about that for myself. I probably could use a moment of tenderness with God a little more often. I could give myself that space. And I think that if I did, I would also maybe be less tempted to feel such the weight of the world like I often do, or feel kind of enmeshed in the power struggle that is that you were talking about, Alice, that goes all around us. But that Jesus had that relationship, and maybe I could enter a little more deeply, and that would help me with maybe some of my own temptations that the temptations that move me away from God or get me distracted or that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I was thinking of this this time of reflection.
This is probably not new, but I was thinking also of the three different kinds of temptations that Jesus had.
Mm,
Um, one was a pleasure, fulfilling his own desires. One could be riches, and another one power. And I think that's pretty much covers a person's life.
mm,
And so it's like, how do you prepare yourself for these temptations? And I think this reading is telling me that the fasting that sometimes I don't understand or don't agree with or don't like can be a real asset to help with this.
mm,
To it because when you fast or diet or deprive yourself, I think you have a clearer mind of what's going on. It seems to make a person or me better focused on what, and then I can answer the question, what am I hungry for? What do I really want to work on? Is it my own pleasure, riches, or power? Or is it more social justice and freedom and the care of the earth and the care of human beings who are right next door to me?
mm,
So I think for each, it's a call to make their own choice um, of what they're going to do,
mm.
how they'll respond to the tempter.
And as I was listening to the reading and then also to the sharing here, it was like it's almost like the devil wanted to play a game with Jesus,
Mm,
like a I dare you kind of game. And that I think is why what we need to get away from, or maybe I need to get away from. I don't need to play games with power. I don't need to want to be like everyone else and be in sort of a competitive mode or whatever, which is sort of game like. it seems like Lent is a time again to say, okay, what is important?
Mm.
What is really important if I'm going to understand the resurrection at some point?
Mm.
And, you know, it leads back for me as a sister of divine providence to abandonment to providence to say, okay, God, actually, you're in charge. We don't need to play a game about this. I know you're in charge. I just need to accept that and not banter back and forth or whatever. Just be accepting about what really is a call in my life and in human life in general.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, both of what you said is those are helpful things for me. Um, I love Lent, actually. I think because of the way it calls me back to what's most important. And it's kind of like the starkness of the season, the simplicity of it helps me to kind of get back to basics in a helpful way for me spiritually. It's very grounding. Um, and maybe like to let go of some of the distractions that are usually around me to enter into prayer in a different way. And I was thinking about what you said before, Judy, about what am I hungry for? And I think when Lent rolls around, I am hungry for a certain level of simplicity that I may not have in the rest of life. And maybe this year in particular, I think I am hungry for a little more tenderness or presence, a little more stillness.
Mhm. That's as Alice was talking, I was just thinking, yeah, I look at Lent not so much as a fasting, which is part of it, but also as a choosing to do something different and something more that will bring me closer to God, to reach um, that level of communication and communion with God that I hunger for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I lose touch with what I hunger for. You know, it's
Mhm.
not one of the things I have on my agenda every day. It's good to have a season or a time when you're actually called to say, what deep down is it that I hunger for? Because that helps us meet the hunger. If we gloss over it and don't recognize it, how will we find the grace or allow the grace to work in us to fulfill that need?
Mm. And so now we'll move into sharing about a call or an invitation that we have noticed in our sharing or in this reading or both.
Well, I think one of the calls that I hear, based on this reading and other things too, of course, is to allow myself to be called to the mountain, to the place of revelation and challenge. I think in the busyness and hecticness and whatever else of every day, maybe I don't think about that enough. And on the mountain, I believe I will find and do find the power to be abandoned and to trust in God. And that is what is needed to be ready for Easter. How can I ever accept a risen God if I can't allow myself to be at a place where a resurrection is a possibility or a trusting is not there enough to accept what is actually rather a unique spiritual dynamic, the resurrection of a God.
Mm.
Mhm. I think for me, one of the things that I really want to do or probably need to do for myself is to answer the question, what am I really hungry for? And the fasting will be to take away those things that keep me from moving towards what I am hungry for. So it's an identification and it's a movement, which I consider all very positive. Because sometimes, I look at Lent as all negative, and that's the way I grew up. It was a big negative in the middle of the year, I guess. And I don't think of it as that anymore. It's a positive attitude and movement towards Easter, which is the whole purpose of God, to raise and for us to be raised into full communion with God. And I can do that in my small way, day by day.
Yeah, so I think the invitation I hear is maybe similar to say yes to the invitation of Lent, to come away with God and enter into the simplicity of the season and maybe the starkness of it, which, yeah, I agree with you. I used to think of that as negative, but actually it's something I like and appreciate now. So to give myself that gift of tenderness, really.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And all of you who are listening and present here with us, in spirit, even though we can't see you, we know you're there with us. Maybe there's a call or an invitation that you have that you want to set an intention for, especially as we begin this season and this movement toward Easter. And so maybe that's something you're reflecting on and thinking about with us. And we will certainly keep each other in prayer during this season. And yeah, thanks for being with us in our circle of sisters here. And thanks so much to Judy and to Alice for entering into this conversation with me. It's always a rich sharing with the two of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to say?
No, just wishing everybody a happy Lent.
And a profitable spiritual experience during that happy Lent.
Exactly.
Yep. Great. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Providence podcast. I hope you continue to stay connected with God's space and, of course, the Sisters of Divine Providence of Kentucky. As you continue your spiritual journey, may you notice all the ways that God cares for you, and may we all take good care of each other.